Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Rohini Nayyar Prize for an outstanding contribution to rural development by a person aged 40 and under. It hasn't quite been a year since we gave the first prize. That was in December last year. But we moved it forward this year because today is my late mother's birthday. It would have been her 79th birthday, and we hope to do this every year on her birthday. There's nothing more she liked than being with friends, family, colleagues, and people connected with rural development. So this is a perfect gathering on her birth anniversary. Next year, Diwali falls on 31st October, so next year it'll be a week later, but otherwise, continuing into the future, we will do it on 31st October every year. Thank you all for coming on a weekday evening. I'd like to welcome our chief guest, Mr. N.K. Singh, who actually needs no introduction, but most recently he's chairman of the 15th Finance Commission. He's been an MP, he's been a senior civil servant, secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Prime Minister's office. He also did a stint in the Planning Commission, and I think that's one thing we associate very much with the late Dr. Rohini Nayyar, who spent 17 or 9, probably more than that, 19 years of her working life in the Planning Commission. So, and of course, Mr. Singh knew her personally and professionally. So it's great to have someone presiding over this event who knew my late mother, Dr. Nayyar, and had worked with her. Welcome, Mr. N.K. Singh. We'd like to give you a small token of our appreciation, a plant to welcome you. I mean, this prize wouldn't have been conceived and implemented without the support of 4 special people who are our jury. Of course, they call on who the winners are each year, but more than that, they've helped us conceptualize this prize. They are actually the specialists in civil society and in many ways rural development, whereas none of the family which remains is specialist. So thank you so much, all of you. Dr. Rajesh Tandon is here, founder president of PIA, Participatory Research in Asia, an eminent civil society person, runs a very interesting prize in memory of his late wife, the Martha Farrell Award. And he's, of course, that's a great award, and I would recommend all of you to go for that ceremony when it happens every year. But thank you, Dr. Tandon, and I'd like to present you a small token of our appreciation. We also have with us Rirana Jebwala, again, a very well-known name in civil society, hardly needs an introduction, has been associated with SEWA for many years and chairs several of their organizations, instrumental in the empowerment of women all over India. Thank you for being part of the jury and for being here today. We'd like to give you a small moment. We have 2 other members of the jury who couldn't be here. Dr. Ashok Khosla, founder president of Development Alternatives, and Professor Sita Prabhu, who's an economist at TIS right now in Mumbai, but she's been at Mumbai University and at the UN for several years, also knew the late Dr. Nayyar very well. So these are our 4 very eminent jury persons who, as I said, been the force behind this prize in many ways, along with the family. So thank you all for being here on the dais and in the audience. I'd like to invite my father, Professor Deepak Nayyar, to say a brief few words about my late mother, Dr. Rohini Nayyar, and the prize.
Our chief guest, N.K. Singh, our members of the jury who are present here, Rajesh Tandon and Rirana Jebwala, distinguished guests and old friends. I'm touched that so many of you have made the effort to join us this evening. As you had said, we hope to announce the prize on this day every year, as it was Rohini's birthday. To begin with, I'd like to say something about Rohini, my life partner and soulmate for more than half a century, and outline why we have instituted this prize in memory of her life and work. Rohini and I first met in 1965 when we were final year undergraduates at the University of Delhi. We got married in 1969. The young Rohini I knew was always clear that she wanted to join the IAS, and there are many of our colleagues here. There were two reasons. First, it was about asserting her independence at a time when it was difficult for young women to escape the fate of an arranged marriage, let alone enter the world of work, so that gender equality was a distant dream. Second, it was about a desire to connect with rural India and work for the well-being of poor people. She stayed with her determination and joined the IAS. In solidarity, I did the same. Sometime later, in pursuit of my academic quest, I returned to Oxford with Rohini, both of us on leave from the government. It was no surprise that while at Oxford, Rohini wrote her B.Litt dissertation on landless agricultural labour in Uttar Pradesh, her research supported by field work in Barabanki and Raebareli. The then district magistrate, Gangadhar Shukla, our old friend, is here from the US. He was there. It was not long before she realized that academia was my natural home, and she decided to quit what was her natural home in solidarity with me. We stayed on in England through the 70s, and Rohini reinvented her professional life by doing a PhD. She stayed with and nurtured her core interests, even as she moved seamlessly from administration to research. Her doctoral thesis, later published by Oxford University Press, titled Rural Poverty in India, an analysis of interstate differences, was both original and pioneering. She estimated the calorie equivalent of the actual quantities of food consumed, then constructed state-specific poverty lines in money terms to provide systematic estimates of poverty in rural India during the 70s and 80s. She was also the first to study interstate differences and how these related to malnutrition, disease, morbidity, education, and healthcare. These multiple dimensions of poverty had barely received any attention by economists at the time. Now, there is a story from then that might interest you. Rohini took long to submit her PhD. At the Viva Voce examination, one examiner asked, "Rohini, this is a superb thesis. Why did it take you so long?" She replied, "My only defense can be that in 7 years, I have produced not only one PhD thesis, but also 2 children." The examiner could only say that is admirable. At the time, Dheeraj was just over 5 and Gaurav was just over 2 years old. Rohini returned to the world of work in India when she joined the Planning Commission, where she served for almost 2 decades, bridging the gap between research and policy, providing leadership on a wide range of policy issues during this period, spanning poverty alleviation, employment creation, drought-prone areas, wasteland development, Panchayati Raj, women and child development, nutrition, civil society, and she knew our jury members much more than I did. They worked together with her. She was closely associated with the implementation and evaluation of several self-employment programs in rural areas and was a strong advocate of the consolidation of many such centrally sponsored schemes that did happen. The culmination of her efforts in this domain was the conception and design of the MNREGA during 2004 and 5 at the Planning Commission, where she played a pivotal role. As I think Dr. Manmohan Singh once told us, you've tried to sell this to many governments over the years, but we are going to implement it. The culmination of her efforts in this domain was the conception and design of MNREGA. Now, she also championed the idea and led the process of preparing the first ever India Human Development Report. But this watershed initiative was only a beginning, as she went on to institute a series of human development reports for most states in India, involving reputed institutions and scholars in this endeavor. These are just a few examples spanning the range of her professional contributions, which are widely recognized. Rohini might not have been visible in the public domain, but she was incredibly influential in shaping public policy. Yet that was Rohini, working tirelessly behind the scenes to make a lasting impact on rural development. In doing so, she mentored her younger colleagues, empowering a generation of economists, administrators, policymakers, and development practitioners. Yet, in keeping with her persona, she was so modest and unassuming that she never spoke about her professional work life with either family or friends. Essentially, her life was about much more than her world of work. Family and friends were just as important. So was art, so were handicrafts. She was a real connoisseur of saris who had an intimate knowledge of their weaves and designs as much as their geographies and histories. Her passion for and collection of saris was widely known and much admired among those who knew that world. Rohini is remembered fondly by all for her personal qualities as she touched the lives of everyone she came in touch with, whether at work or in the world outside. She was a considerate, caring, empathetic, understanding, generous, and affectionate person who was always most thoughtful about others, and she was adored by people across the spectrum of age who knew her. The Rohini Nayyar Prize for an outstanding contribution to rural development in India, conceived by us, is our attempt to embody that spirit of Rohini, to recognize and reward young individuals working away from the media headlines with marginalized communities in remote areas to create better living conditions for people and enable longer-term sustainable development. This idea surfaced in a conversation I had with our sons Dheeraj and Gaurav a few months after we lost Rohini, as we thought it was also important for us to celebrate her professional life. The transformation of the idea into a concept and then into reality, as Dheeraj said, would simply not have been possible without the knowledge, experience, wisdom and guidance of Ashok Khosla, Rajesh Tandon, Renana Chhabwala and Sita Prabhu, our esteemed jury members who were most generous with their scarce time. We owe them a deep debt of gratitude. There are two special attributes of the prize that deserve mention. First, it is perhaps the only such prize for a contribution to rural development in India. Second, it is among the few prizes anywhere that are named after women. In times to come, we hope that the Rohini Nayyar Prize will become the gold standard for persons working in the world of rural development in India, and that it would motivate the winners, inspire more innovative work, and disseminate best practices across India. In conclusion, a few words about the future. I am pleased to announce that I have, from my personal resources, endowed a corpus to the Nayyar Foundation, which is large enough to sustain the Rohini Nayyar Prize in perpetuity. The most positive response to the prize has been a wonderful surprise. We have received applications from all over the country. We are greatly impressed by the quality of work being undertaken across rural India that is making a real difference to people's lives, that so many young people under the age of 40 are choosing to work in this space when they have so many career options to choose from, fills us with optimism about the future. We would like to grow what we have started. There is so much talent that needs to be recognized and encouraged. For that, we are contemplating the idea of a runner-up prize. There is also much that can be learned from experiences in rural development across India. We would like to bring together about 40 of these talented young Indians in an annual or biannual colloquium where they can learn from each other, spread best practices, and establish national networks. This idea has stemmed from the collective of the jury with us. In order to do all this, we will be looking for partnerships, collaboration, and support, financial, institutional, and intellectual. Please join us in this journey and spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the I think the debates that we had as a family and with the jury was on the age cutoff. 40 or 50 or should it be more. Most prizes tend to recognize older people, more experienced people, and I think the idea again behind this prize is that if we recognize a younger person, the recognition, not the award, but the recognition itself would motivate them, would help them raise more resources for their own work and, spread their knowledge so that, things get scaled up, not only where they are, but in other parts of India as well. So very much looking at the future and very much looking at people under 40. I think after 2 years, we've received so many good applications from people under 40. It's really incredible, the work, as my father said, that youngsters, highly qualified youngsters who could have, as he said, done anything else, have chosen to, make this their mission life, much like some of our jury members who could have also probably done many other things in life, but chose the civil society way. One of them, Dr. Rajesh Tandon, president of PRIA, he's going to talk to us a little bit about jury's process and how the winner is chosen and the deliberations, etc. Dr. Tandon.
Good evening and welcome you all. Greetings to our chief guest and greetings to you all from the Nayyar Award community, Nayyar family, and 4 of us in the jury. Only 2 of us, Renana and I, are here, but others are here in spirit, as always. We have been very engaged in the idea of an award of this kind, a prize which has substantial amount of resources attached to it, focused on the young people, as Dheeraj was saying, such that the award recognizes them and enables them to do more with the ideas and experiments that they have started. I got to know Rohini ji when she was in the Planning Commission, and more so when she began to link programs of rural development and Panchayati Raj. One of the biggest battles we had to fight was in the design of Manrega, that it will be implemented through Panchayati Raj. That was the first and the largest program at that time, because in all other programs, Planning Commission and Government of India then allowed a scapegoat for others to implement. And hats off to her determination and those of us who shouted support from outside that a program of that kind could be launched, implemented, and in pandemic and post-pandemic period is making its impact in the lives of our rural communities. The jury essentially steps in 3 stages. We had conversation about the announcement, and that time we would discuss, do we need to tweak the criteria? And one of the big debates is around the age. The second issue, that the award is for an individual, though we know many a times people work together. They work in groups, they work part of an organization. And that is another area where, we get this. In fact, one of the applicants said, we know it is for an individual, but 3 of us are nominating ourselves because we work together. And you have to understand that context. We have to deal with it. We can't be dismissive of it. And at the same time, we have to be to go with the criteria that are available in public domain. Then when we received those 92 nominations, we spent some time in shortlisting them. And the shortlisted group of nominations were then given a physical, hands-on due diligence process. So those 10 shortlisted were visited by teams of people drawn from the knowledge or the staff of the jury members and their friends. And irrespective of the public information that is available, combining the physical due diligence with the background information of the nomination and the material available on digital space, we felt very strongly was essential, even though we were racing against time. And I must thank the patience of Deepak and Dheeraj in particular, and the energy and commitment of my fellow jury members, that we were able to meet those deadlines, satisfy ourselves, and be present here with you all to announce the winner of this prize on the birthday of Rohini ji. 2 ideas that have emerged from this process, and we hope that we will take them forward in the coming years of the award. One is around the question of how new technology is being applied in this domain. And sometimes the application of new technology may seem a bit out of context, But I think the award should be able to recognize them in a way that it becomes a support for the future, the sort of the cutting edge, the things which are on the horizon and not yet fully acknowledged or celebrated. And that's a challenge for the way award is communicated and nominations are invited, but also the way jury process is undertaken. And finally, as you may have guessed, many of you know us for we are headstrong, independent, entrepreneurial, tough characters. And so it's great fun. We meet in Deepak's house. The family hosts us. We have long chats over hours, 2, 3, 4 hours in between coffee and other ways of celebrating the conversation happen. But there is no difficulty in arriving at the winner despite those disagreements, because we refer back to the vision of Rohini, and that keeps us focused as well. So thank you all, and it has been an honor and a privilege to be a member of this jury.
Thank you, Dr. Tan. Yes, in fact, sitting in on some of those deliberations is indeed very enriching. Not only are the applicants, exceptional, but so is the deliberation led by our jury. I'd now like to invite our chief guest, Mr. N.K. Singh. I can't think of anyone better to deliver this address because, he's someone who's seen policy at the highest levels for several decades now. And in his most recent role of chairman of Finance Commission, he was also, responsible for deciding, how much money is to be devolved to the states and for what purpose. And I think the government continues to be a critical player in development, in rural development. And I think a combination of civil society, government, academia is very important for this space. So we've heard from civil society. Now let's hear from someone who's more experienced in government than anyone else I know, Mr. N.K. Singh.
Thank you very much, Dheeraj, and thank you for your warm words. Thank you, Deepak, for having given me this privilege to be speaking at the second Rohini Nayyar Award ceremony. Thank you, Mr. Tandon. Thank you to all the jury members, and of course to Gaurav, who is to give the vote of thanks. It's an extraordinary achievement on part of Deepak's friends, to have got this celebrated award ceremony in the memory of Rohini Nayyar. Let me at the outset, therefore, thank the Nayyar Foundation for social and economic purpose for inviting me to this second prize ceremony. The purpose of the prize and the background and so on has been greatly explained by Deepak. I will not repeat that, and also explained the due diligence process, which Rajesh, you have really outlined at great length. Let me begin on a slightly anecdotal note. Dheeraj, you announced that on the 31st, which is today, would have been Rohini's 79th birthday. On a similar note, let me say that my own birthday was just 2 days ago, somewhat older, but it is clear that both Rohini and I, we shared the same sign with the Scorpio sign, and Deepak, you lived really with friends who are Scorpio, and no doubt also Rohini as part of your thing. So that was a commonality which just struck me, even as Dheeraj, you outlined this. On also occasion, this is an important occasion for me to recall with nostalgia, with warmth, my long association with Rohini. And of course, Deepak, I had known you for much longer, and your elder brother, Vineet, who is not with us here today. And we came in contact with you, Deepak, professionally a little earlier in the Ministry of Commerce, where we worked on important areas of trade policy reforms. at a time when the economy was comparatively closed and trade policy reforms really required a degree of ambition and vision. Thereafter, of course, we know that we traverse long distances by what you once jocularly told me, by every mode of transport which was available, from bus and trains and planes, to be able to garner some resources for enabling us to tide over our balance payments difficulty between 91 and 93. I recall, therefore, that period with you, Deepak, in the Ministry of Finance, when we worked almost intimately and closely during a very critical phase in our economic reform process. And of course, as you pointed out, Dheeraj, very correctly, and you also, Deepak, that I came in closer contact with Rohini much later, when I worked as member of what was erstwhile the Planning Commission, and Rohini was the advisor a distinguished advisor, where she spent a significant part of her career in the rural development division and areas in the Planning Commission. I need not recall, since you have done that better, Deepak, that she was a distinguished economist, having done her Bachelor's of Arts from Miranda House, where she taught economics later before moving on and securing a master's from the Delhi School of Economics. Again, a commonality, because I also secured my master's from the Delhi School of Economics, no doubt, somewhat later. But of course, she went to Oxford, and then on to a DPhil from the University of Sussex, working on rural poverty, as you recall, Deepak. And of course, the anecdotal thing which was of interest. Thereafter, she joined the Indian Administrative Service, of which both of you were very distinguished members, Deepak. Coincidentally, Radha, my younger sister, who is here today, also joined the same service in the same year, and both Rohini, Deepak, and Radha, you were distinguished members of the Indian Administrative Service. It must have therefore taken a great degree of deliberation and courage, and your persuasive skills, Deepak, to persuade Rohini to resign from this coveted service and pursue instead an purely academic career. Her contribution in the Planning Commission, in the Rural Development Division from 1987 to 2005 left an indelible footprint in multiple ways. While we are constantly refining our Human Development Report, it was an endeavor first initiated by Rohini in the Planning Commission. This is equally true of several rural development programs, including the Manrega program, which has been mentioned by you, Deepak, and which is constantly undergoing refinements of multiple kinds. This program was refined and further recalibrated, but it's important to recall that its implementation commenced when Rohini was in the Planning Commission, working on India's poverty challenges. Refining methodology for poverty estimation remains a continuing challenge, undergoing continuing refinements with access to better technology and access to, hopefully, data quality which should equal what technology options give us. In more senses than one, therefore, Rohini was somewhat ahead of her times. She worked on themes and on subjects which are still evolving. They constitute an important ingredient of our economic architecture. On this occasion, therefore, let me make a few broad observations on some connected themes. Let me do so by asking myself the question, what would Rohini have said if she was with us today? Let me begin on how she would have questioned the way in which important aspects of rural development institutions have evolved. Unfortunately, many remain fragile, with financial viability continuously eluding them. Let me elaborate only on one aspect of this. A centerpiece of our rural development program is the health of the urban local bodies, the municipalities, and more importantly, the framework of Panchayat Raj institutions. How much have they been restructured to give genuine letter and spirit to the far-reaching amendments of the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments? Several persistent infirmities undercut the quality of constitutional compliance. The interstate variations in what is known as the 3 Fs, function, functionaries, and finance, represent, alas, a very mixed picture. The recalcitrance on the part of a number of state governments to transfer these 3 Fs present an even more uneven picture. This mixed picture can fill no one with satisfaction, would certainly not have given any satisfaction to Rohini if she was with us today. Equally, the ability of these institutions for projectization, viability of technical assistance for project preparation remains mired in technical incompetence, or very often so much so that even the meager financial resources cannot be gainfully utilized both in design and in implementation. What is therefore the path forward? In the 15th Finance Commission, which you mentioned, Dheeraj, in the 15th Finance Commission, we therefore chose to stipulate a compulsory auditing of their accounts, adoption of uniform practices, as well as we introduced the somewhat contentious subject on conditional transfers for 3 important national programs. The health program, we decided to recommend an absolute grant for the health sector, which was 43,000 crores for strengthening primary health centers, infrastructure in rural areas, and in the health-related initiatives of the Panchayat Raj institutions. We did so partly influenced, no doubt, by the pandemic, during the period with which the 15th Finance Commission was really grappling with. And we did so in recognition that this may not be the last pandemic, and strengthening rural health institutions was an important area. Equally, a tiered grant of 71,000 crore for drinking water, rainwater harvesting and water recycling. Equally, a 30% tiered grant of 71,000 crore for sanitation and maintenance of ODS status. So if I ask myself the question, since we do a lot of work on this, how have these conditional transfers worked in the broader context of the ongoing debate between conditional versus untied transfers? Have we reached any tentative conclusions? And is there a more optimum mix which is possible as we look forward to this ongoing debate between conditional versus non-conditional transfers? Remember, these are grants. These are grants from out of the Consolidated Fund of India. And therefore, any person who gives the grant has therefore perhaps the moral right to impose conditions. But the debate on conditional versus non-conditional would be an ongoing one. What is of even greater consequence is the financial viability of rural institutions. This is an area which was Deepak, on which Rohini had worked a great deal. Now we know that under Article 243(1) of our Constitution, which is analogous to Article 280 of the Constitution, mirrors exactly for states the same provisions for State Finance Commission as Article 280 does in the Constitution for Central Finance Commission. This article obligates state governments and the governors, therefore, that at the expiry of every 5 years, he is obliged to appoint a State Finance Commission to go into the distribution of taxes between the states and the Panchayat out of the consolidated fund of the state, just as the Finance Commission, Central Finance Commission, does so from the overall consolidated fund of India, what goes into it and what it becomes divisible much before that. The tardiness and lack of uniformity in practices followed by state governments is a continuing worrying feature. In the 15th Finance Commission, we gave some sharp recommendations relating to state finance commissions, the auditing of their accounts, and importantly, for restoring the finances of these institutions. Strictly speaking, central finance commissions are not obligated. And many of the people like Rakesh and others I see who have worked on it, they are not obligated to provide any resources for the third-tier institutions, no matter how central they are to the overall architecture of rural development. These are supposed to come out of the resources of the Consolidated Fund of the State based on the recommendations of the State Finance Commission. So we have every finance commission has this continuing dilemma. We had one too. We had one of whether or not to provide any resources to the third tier whatsoever, and whether we should give more time for a more orderly transition where state finance commissions become more responsible in recognizing their constitutional obligations. I chose to walk away from that option. I chose to do so because I felt that if we did deny these resources, many of these institutions would wither away further, and this would be a death knell for the third tier of governance with which we hold a lot of prospect as we go along. So we give a very, very hefty sum of money. But going beyond this now, I want to raise another issue. That issue is that following the application of the goods and services tax in 2017, a period when Rohini had not worked on this subject, but she would have if she was around, that the GST subsumed a whole lot of taxes, a fundamental abridgment of Part 12 of the Constitution, and many of the taxes which were subsumed were the resources which really would have come to the third tier of government. And therefore, with the application of the GST and the inability to find any symmetry between what state governments receive from the GST, they receive large resources from the GST, but there is no correlationship of that with the money which then becomes available to the third tier of government. So what shall we do to be able to overcome this very big handicap, namely no tangible relationship between taxes collected by state governments subsumed under the GST and the finances which become available to the third tier for enabling minimum amounts of financial viability? Should there be a stipulation, I ask myself this question, a stipulation that a certain earmarked proportion or a percentage from the taxes subsumed by the states are compulsorily available to the third tier? Would that be an appropriate course of action? And we need to therefore look to alternative sources of revenue. In the light of what I have said, I did try to look into some alternative sources of revenue. I came to the conclusion that perhaps one area which has a huge prospect, an unexplored area, is property tax. The imposition, methodology, and linkages of such property tax to some indexation, like the growth of state GST, is a recommendation whose outcome we have yet to evaluate. Property tax, undoubtedly, is an unexplored area with long-term multiplier gains. Third, going beyond this, should there be a stipulation on the GST mechanism itself, which would entitle them, as I said, to a certain proportion of that? Would the states believe that doing such would be a further erosion of their federal autonomy, even though they gain these taxes because the GST subsumed them? Would that be an appropriate conclusion for state governments to come? That is the further erosion of their own autonomy, or would that be a more pragmatic understanding of the broad features which led to the GST? Finally, rural development, an area which was also very close to Rohini's heart. There has been a progressive increase in the resources for rural development. We know about Manrega. We know about the other resources. Bulk of these are in the centrally sponsored schemes. We know that the debate on the future and the debate on the relevance of centrally sponsored schemes last word on that has not been said. It raises the debate of whether centrally sponsored schemes undercut the basic principles of fiscal federalism. No doubt, the proliferation of the centrally sponsored schemes, and incidentally, Deepak, many of us who have sought to count this, at one stage, I lost count when we exceeded 150. I pushed it, Sudipto is smiling, and with the rationalization of that, it had no doubt significantly come down, but not really, because what has happened are umbrella schemes under which the centrally sponsored schemes really have continued to be there with minuscule amounts of budgetary devolution. So as we go forward, what is the future of centrally sponsored schemes that not only take a large part of the central government revenue, but such is the quest of the state governments that they would like to be part of it, therefore forecloses an important part of their own revenues. And therefore, the issue of the methodology, the processes of centrally sponsored schemes needs much greater public debate than has been possible so far. I've touched on a few issues, Dheeraj, on which Rohini worked and devoted a good part of a distinguished period in the Planning Commission. These remain germane both to public policy making, and these would remain relevant for the continued engagement of economists, particularly if you look at it from the political economy aspect of it. Finally, let me thank you once again, and to the organizers for the honor they have given me to inviting me for this prestigious function. What you do, it is said, is history. What you set in motion is legacy. Rohini set in motion many thoughts, endeavors, and these constitute her legacy. It is this legacy which we celebrate today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that most insightful 20 minutes. I think, as you said, my late mother would have probably worked on a lot of those issues had she been around and still in a professional life. But, a lot of her legacy continues to be debated and discussed. And I think the fundamental point you make about institutions and, the architecture, I think that's something which often gets ignored in the Indian context. And I think, we'll all therefore remember what you said about the need to fundamentally strengthen institutions financially, functionally. Now we move on to the part and change focus to the winner of this year's prize. What we'll do is, instead of naming him, what I'll do is I'll ask the team to play the video so that he can introduce himself via the video, himself and his work, and then we'll call him up to speak to us. So can we have the video for the winner of the second Rohini Nayyar Prize?
Nestled in the heart of Chhattisgarh lies Bastar, a landscape of enchanting forests and resilient tribal communities. For decades, this land has battled insurgency, affecting the lives of some of India's most marginalized people, the Adivasis of the region. The indigenous Adivasis of Bastar rely on agriculture and forest produce for their livelihood. However, poverty, illiteracy, and exploitation have pushed them to the fringes of society, with women bearing the brunt of these challenges. Moved by their plight, 31-year-old Dinanath Rajput, hailing from an ordinary farming family in Bharatpur village, made a choice that changed lives. Dinanath, an engineer turned social worker, found his calling in the upliftment of women of Bastar. With a stint as a software engineer in Bangalore, Dinanath's heart was always with the people at the grassroots.
कहीं ना कहीं मेरा मन उन आदिवासी महिलाओं की सेवा और उनकी स्थिति को सुधार करने में लगा हुआ था। मैं वहाँ भी बैठकर इन ग्रामीण के लिए कुछ न कुछ करना है करके प्लानिंग करते ही रहता था। 6 महीने की इंजीनियरिंग की नौकरी करके मैंने नौकरी छोड़ के बस्तर आ गया, और बस्तर में मैं जैसे प्रेरणा मेरे को मिला कि यहाँ जो महिलाएं हैं बिचौलिए से बहुत त्रस्त हैं, इनको लीडरशिप की प्रॉब्लम है, साथ ही जागरूकता की कमी है।
During a survey, Dinanath discovered the struggles of tribal communities in selling their farm produce. The absence of scientific farming methods and exploitation by traders were their major hurdles. Dinanath founded the Bhumgadi Farmer Producer Company in 2018, starting with 337 tribal women. His goal? To help them sell and market their produce. He began by creating self-help groups for women, teaching them efficient farming methods and making them aware of government schemes. Initially, the farmers were hesitant about his approach, but Dinanath persisted and went ahead and established the Hariyar Bastar brand for vegetables and agricultural products, along with the Hariyar Bastar Bazaar, which now has 3 branches. In a business-to-business model, the self-help groups in rural Chhattisgarh helped both farmers and consumers during the first lockdown. To honor the farmers, Dinanath initiated the Bastar Cafe, a remarkable endeavor from farmer to kitchen. It provided employment to tribal women and their children, specially affected by Naxalism. Dinanath's efforts have transformed lives.
हमारी सारी जो भी फसल हम बिचौलियों को ही पहले देते थे, लेकिन इस बीच हमारे राजपूत सर आए और हमें भूमगादी के बारे में, खरीदी बिक्री के बारे में बताए, और तब से हम जितने भी हमारे फसल होती हैं उनको हम सर के माध्यम से हम भूमगादी में ही बेचते हैं। भूमगादी को देकर हमें अच्छी इनकम मिलती है, जिससे हम आज अच्छे पक्के मकान भी बना पाए हैं और हमारे बच्चों को अच्छी जगह पढ़ा लिखा भी पा रहे हैं।
उत्पाद को बेचने के लिए हरियाणा बाजार में स्थान बनाए और खाद बीज का उपलब्ध करा दिए। हमारे गांव से अभी देश विदेश में हमारे नाम से बिक रहा है।
एनपीओ के जरिए मुझे राजपूत सर से संपर्क हुआ, उन्होंने चयन करके मुझे बस्तर कैफे में रोजगार दिया और आज पे वह मिट्टी प्रबंधन सीख रही है।
Today, his initiative spans 3 districts, benefiting over 6,100 farmers who are all shareholders in the company.
आज की स्थिति में महिलाएं सशक्त हो गई हैं, रोजगार के अवसर इनको उपलब्ध हो चुके हैं, ये संगठित हो चुके हैं। संगठित के साथ साथ ही इनमें जागरूकता उत्पन्न हो चुकी है।
In the heart of these forests, a community has found its strength, and their voices now echo far beyond the trees, proving that change is possible when dedicated individuals like Dinanath come forward.
So, ladies and gentlemen, your hands together for the winner of the second Rohini Nayyar Prize, Mr. Dinanath Rajput. दीनानाथ जी, आप हमसे कुछ शब्द कहिए अपनी आपने जो काम कार्य किया है और आपकी कहानी सब सुनना चाहेंगे।
मैं दीनानाथ राजपूत आज के कार्यक्रम के मुख्य अतिथि माननीय एनकेसी सर का मैं नमस्कार और अभिनंदन करता हूं। साथ ही उपस्थित यहाँ समस्त जूरी मेंबर और बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स और हमारे जो अतिथिगण हैं उनका भी मैं नमस्कार और अभिनंदन करता हूं। आज का जो सम्मान है वो कहीं ना कहीं मेरे द्वारा बस्तर में किए गए कार्यों को देखकर ऐसा किया गया है। मैंने स्टार्टिंग में बस्तर से करीब करीब महिलाओं से कार्य प्रारंभ किया और आज महिलाएं एम्पावरमेंट की ओर बढ़ रही हैं। साथ ही रोजगार के अवसर भी उपलब्ध हो रहे हैं। आज उनकी स्थिति बहुत बेहतर हो रही है और उन बेहतर स्थिति को देखते हुए मैंने 3 लोगों से यह कार्य प्रारंभ किए और आज करीब करीब 52 आजकल मेरे साथ सहयोगी काम करने वाले जुड़ चुके हैं, जो कहीं ना कहीं मेरे जो बताए हुए रास्ते हैं और कदम हैं उन पे कार्य कर रहे हैं। और साथ ही ऐसे बहुत सारे कृषि मित्र हैं जो इनडायरेक्टली उनको बेनिफिट्स हो रहे हैं और आगे जाकर वो दूसरे डिस्ट्रिक्ट में भी हमारे कार्यों को बढ़ावा दे रहे हैं। साथ ही हमने किसान केंद्र के लिए किसानों की समस्याओं को दूर करने के लिए किसान केंद्र की स्थापना की, जिससे किसान वहाँ के सामूहिक खरीदी बिक्री कर सके और सस्टेनेबल प्रोक्योरमेंट माध्यम के द्वारा उनको एक बेहतर मार्केट भी उपलब्ध कराया गया। साथ ही हमने कुछ ऐसे कार्य किए, जैसे कुपोषण के लिए हमने एक टैगलाइन भी दिया कि बस्तर के चीते हैं मड़िया पे के जीते हैं। मड़िया मीन से कि फॉक्सटेल मिलेट को अरबी में मड़िया कहा जाता है, जिसका अर्थ ये होता है कि हम मिलेट खा के चीते के समान फुर्ती और शक्तिशाली बने। ऐसा करके हमने कुपोषण पर भी कार्य किया। साथ ही हमारी जो तकनीक है वो लोग जाने, इसके लिए हमने एक्सपोजर यूनिट जैसी सुविधाएं भी उत्पन्न की, जाके दूसरे किसान भी उसका लाभ ले सके, लाभ लेके वो भी फ़ायदा उठा सके और उन्नत तकनीक से अपने कृषि को कर सके। आज बस्तर के लोग लक्ष्मीवान को छोड़ के कृषि को अपना रहे हैं और मुख्य धाराओं में आ रहे हैं। साथ ही साथ मुख्य धाराओं के अलावा वो आज वर्षा के जो जल हैं, पहाड़ों से जल है, उनको चेक डैम एवं तालाबों के माध्यम से रक्षित करके डबल खेती कर रहे हैं। डबल खेती के द्वारा हमको ये फायदा हो रहा है कि आज लोग पलायन नहीं कर रहे हैं और साथ ही साथ उनको गांव में रोजगार की भी सुविधा उपलब्ध हो रही है। बायोडाइवर्सिटी को देखते हुए हमने यह किया कि हम लोगों को जैविक कृषि की ओर बढ़ाए और आज हमारी कैफे जैसे आपने देखा, कैफे में हम टोटली बायोडिग्रेडेबल आइटम रखते हैं, जैसे कि सालम से बने हुए पत्ते, मिट्टी के बर्तन एवं पौष्टिक आहार ही हम प्रदान करते हैं। आज महिलाएं कहीं ना कहीं मेरे को मसीहा समझते हैं, जो कि मेरे को बहुत अतिशयोक्ति लगता है, क्योंकि मैं बस एक माध्यम हूँ इन महिलाओं का साथ देने के लिए। और यदि ये महिलाएं और वहाँ के लोग मेरा सपोर्ट और साथ नहीं देते तो शायद ही मैं ये कार्य कर पाता, जिसके लिए मैं उन सभी महिलाओं का भी धन्यवाद देता हूँ। स्थानीय प्रशासन है उनका भी धन्यवाद देता हूँ जिन्होंने मेरा पूरा सहयोग प्रदान किया, और उन सब लोगों का भी धन्यवाद करता हूँ जो मेरे साथ मेरे विचारों को साथ दे के आज आगे बढ़ रहे हैं और मेरा कदम हर कदम पर मेरा साथ दे रहे हैं। साथ ही साथ मैं नायर फाउंडेशन एवं उन सभी लोगों का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूँ जो मुझे इस काबिल समझा और इस अवार्ड से सम्मानित किए। और साथ ही उम्मीद और आशा करता हूँ कि आगे भी इस तरीके से प्रेम और स्नेह बना के रखें, जिससे मैं दुगनी ऊर्जा के साथ इन लोगों के हित के लिए कार्य कर सकूं और बेहतर रिजल्ट दे सकूं। धन्यवाद। थैंक यू।
धीराज जी, आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई। का कार्य सचमुच में सराहनीय है। अब आप वी विल नाउ गिव द अवार्ड मिस्टर एनके सिंह, इफ यू कुड। Just all that remains is a lot of people are behind the scenes and have helped with this. So a vote of thanks to all of them. My brother Gaurav will do the honors.
Thank you. I would like to begin with our chief guest, Mr. N.K. Singh. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedule and gracing the occasion. To our jury, we certainly could not have done this without you. So Dr. Tandon, Ms. Chabwala, Dr. Khosla, and Professor Sita Prabhu. Thank you all for your time, meticulousness, and care with which you guided the selection process. To Professor Alak Sharma, Founder Director, and Priyanka Tyagi, CEO of the Institute for Human Development, where incidentally my late mother was one of the founders. So thank you, exceedingly, really big thank you for you to help organize this event. And we owe a special debt of gratitude to Priyanka Tyagi and her team for really behind the scenes coordinating the logistics, creating the audio-visual content, and also spearheading the social media campaign for this prize. To all media persons in the room, thank you for being here. Your coverage last year, no doubt, helped place the prize in the public domain and helped spread the word for this year and hopefully for subsequent years as well. दीनानाथ, आपका भी धन्यवाद कि आपने इतनी दूरी का सफ़र तय किया और हमारे साथ आज इस कार्यक्रम का अहम हिस्सा बने। हम सभी की यही मनोकामना है कि भारत के ग्रामीण विकास में आपका योगदान बुलंद रहे और इस योगदान से देश के अनेक युवा प्रेरित हो। सो थैंक यू। And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, both online and in person, thank you for breathing life into the award ceremony. And I'm sure that my mother is smiling from the heavens to see all of you, friends, colleagues, family, come together and join in for a celebration. She was, after all, besides being a rural development practitioner extraordinaire and a sari connoisseur, deep down the quintessential people person. So thank you all for coming. We again hope to see all of you, hopefully, next year at the 3rd Rohini Nayyar Prize, where we will celebrate another journey, another awardee, and his or her innovative contribution to India's rural development. Thank you, and have a good evening.